This story is very meaningful. Everyone should hear it. Listen to Brian tell the story. My name is Sarah Miller, a 38-year-old mom of two boys, living in a quiet suburb just outside Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been married to Mike for 16 years, and up until last Sunday, I thought we had it pretty good. Stable jobs, he's a software engineer, I'm a part-time accountant, two great kids, Josh who's 15, and Ethan who's 10, and a life that, while not perfect, felt solid. We argue sometimes, sure, but nothing that ever shook the foundation. That is, until Mike sat me down with a poster in his hand and shattered everything I thought I knew about him, about us. It was last Sunday, just after I'd dropped the boys off at their friends' houses, when he hit me with it. He wanted to go on a gaycation with Bill, his sister's husband, to Miami next year. A trip where straight men, he said, could become gay for a week, but it wouldn't count because what happens on the gaycation stays on the gaycation. I stood there frozen, as he waved that ridiculous poster in my face, his voice buzzing with excitement while my world tilted off its axis. It started innocently enough, or so I thought. I'd just walked back into the house, still humming from the morning's routine, when Mike called out from the living room. "Sarah, you got a minute? We've got the place to ourselves." His tone was light, almost playful, and I figured he wanted to sneak in some alone time, something we hadn't had much of lately with the kids around. I smiled, kicking off my shoes, and said, "Sure, what's up?" He patted the couch beside him, and I sat down, expecting maybe a sweet moment or even a goofy idea about a weekend getaway. Instead, he pulled out this glossy, neon-colored poster from behind a cushion, like he'd been hiding it, waiting for the perfect moment. It screamed, "Miami Gaycation 2025, Sun, Sand, and Surrender," in bold letters, with pictures of shirtless guys laughing on a beach. My stomach did a little flip, not because of the images, but because of the way his eyes lit up as he started talking. "Okay, hear me out," he said, leaning forward, his hands animated like he was pitching a startup idea. "It's called a gaycation. It's this thing where straight guys like me go somewhere awesome, like Miami, and just, try out being gay for a bit. But it's totally fine because it doesn't count. What happens there stays there. Me and Bill have been talking about it, and we're thinking next summer. It's no big deal." His words tumbled out fast, like he'd rehearsed them, and I just sat there, my mouth half open, trying to process what I was hearing. My husband, the guy who forgets anniversaries but remembers every Star Wars line, was telling me he wanted to hook up with men on a beach and call it a vacation. I felt this cold wave wash over me, my chest tightening as I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. But there wasn't one. He kept going, oblivious to the way my hands clenched the edge of the couch. "Mike," I finally managed, my voice shaky but firm, "are you saying you want to cheat on me? With men? With Bill?" My mind raced to Jenny, my little sister, married to Bill for 12 years. Did she know about this? Mike's face scrunched up like I'd insulted him. "No, no, no, it's not cheating," he said, waving the poster like it was evidence. "That's the beauty of it, Sarah. It's just an experience. I'm not gay. I love you. I love women. I love our boys. But this is like going to an aquarium. You look at the fish, you get up close, but you don't become a fish, right?" His analogy was so absurd I almost laughed, but the shock kept me silent. I felt my throat tighten, a mix of disbelief and hurt bubbling up as he rambled on about how straight men do this all the time, and how he and Bill had been researching it. Researching? What did that even mean? I couldn't take it anymore. "Mike," I cut in, my voice louder now, "be straight with me. Are you gay? Because if you are, that's okay. We can figure it out. But I need to know." His face went red, and he snapped, "I'm not gay. Why are you accusing me of that? I'm 100% into women. You know that. This is just a thing, a curiosity. Maybe I'm a little bi, but this isn't about that. It's about the gaycation." He was yelling now, defensive, and I felt this hot flash of anger mix with my confusion. "So you're not gay, not bi, but you need to go to Miami to have sex with men?" I asked, standing up, my hands trembling. "And you think I'm just supposed to be fine with that?" He stood too, towering over me, his voice dropping to a frustrated growl. "You're not getting it. It's not cheating if it's a gaycation. It's like a cultural exchange. I just want to see how gay guys live. How's that any different from you going to a yoga retreat?" I wanted to scream. A yoga retreat? This wasn't Downward Dog. This was my husband planning an orgy with his brother-in-law. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm, and said, "Mike, even if you're bi, this is cheating. I'm not okay with it." He threw his hands up, exasperated. "You're making this into something it's not. Once the gaycation starts, you can't resist it. You have to surrender mind, body, and soul, or it'll destroy you. That's the rule. His words hit me like a slap, so surreal I almost doubted I'd heard them right. Surrender or be destroyed? Who talks like that? I stared at him, his face flushed with this weird conviction, and I felt a chill creep up my spine. This wasn't just Mike being quirky, this was something else. I turned and walked out of the room, my head spinning, leaving him muttering about how I didn't get it. The rest of that day, I ignored him. I locked myself in our bedroom, scrolling my phone, trying to make sense of it. Every time I heard his footsteps outside the door, my stomach knotted up, half expecting him to knock, half dreading he'd try to explain again. By dinner time, I couldn't avoid him anymore. The boys were still out, and we sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the silence thick as I picked at my food. Finally, I asked, "Why, Mike? Why do you need this so bad if you're not gay?" My voice was quiet, almost pleading, and he looked up, his eyes tired but stubborn. "I told you," he said, poking at his plate. "I'm interested in how gay men's lives are different. It's like anthropology. And yeah, once you're there, you can't fight it. You surrender or it breaks you. But it's normal. I'm just late to the game." I set my fork down, my appetite gone. "If you love me," I said, staring right at him, "you won't do this. If you go, our marriage is over." He didn't say anything, just looked down, and that silence cut deeper than any argument. The next few days were hell. Mike barely functioned. He called out sick from work Monday, then dragged himself in for half a day Tuesday, looking like a ghost every time I passed him in the hall. I could see it tearing him up, this decision, and part of me wondered if he was bi, or even gay, and just couldn't admit it. But the way he clung to this gaycation excuse, it felt like denial, like he'd built a fantasy to avoid the truth. I couldn't stand it anymore. Wednesday morning, I texted Jenny and asked her to meet me at our favorite coffee shop. I needed to know if Bill was serious about this, if she was in the same nightmare I was. Jenny showed up at Brew and Bean, her usual bounce gone, replaced by this jittery energy that mirrored mine. We grabbed a corner booth, and I didn't waste time. "Jenny, Mike told me Sunday he's planning a gaycation with Bill. Miami next summer. He says it's where straight guys go to be gay for a week, but it doesn't count. Has Bill said anything?" Her face went from confusion to horror in seconds, her coffee cup trembling in her hands. "What? No, he hasn't said a word." "A gaycation? That's insane, Sarah." She fumbled for her phone, texting Bill furiously, her fingers shaking so bad she had to retype twice. "I'm asking him right now," she muttered, her voice tight with panic. I watched her, my own chest aching, knowing that whatever came back was going to break her too. While we waited, Lila walked in, my lifeline in this mess. She's been my best friend since college, a journalist who's seen it all, and I'd texted her to join us. She slid into the booth, laptop already open, her dark eyes sharp. "Sarah filled me in," she said, cutting straight to it. "This gaycation thing, it's not just Mike and Bill being weird. I've heard whispers about online groups pushing stuff like this. Give me a sec to dig." Jenny's phone pinged, and she read aloud, her voice cracking. "Bill says, yeah, me and Mike are thinking about it. Just a guy thing. Chill." "Chill? He thinks I should chill?" She looked at me, tears welling up, and I reached across the table, grabbing her hand. "We're in this together," I said, though I barely believed it myself. Lila tapped away, then turned her screen toward us. "Found it. Straight Escape, some underground forum. Thousands of guys all buying into this gaycation idea. They've got threads about Miami, rules like surrender or be destroyed, even a paid tier for hypnosis. It's run by someone called the Moderator." My stomach dropped. Hypnosis? I thought of Mike's glazed look when he talked about surrendering, and it hit me. He wasn't just curious, he was hooked. Jenny stared at the screen, her breath hitching. "Bill's on this too? How long have they been planning this?" Lila shrugged, grim. "Long enough to drop $500 each on the hypno tier. This isn't a vacation, it's a scam, maybe worse." That night, I couldn't sit still. Mike was moping in the basement, avoiding me, and I called Lila over. "I need to see his laptop," I said, my voice low as she sat up at the kitchen table. "He never logs out. Too lazy." She nodded, cracking her knuckles like this was a mission, and within minutes, we were in. Straight Escape glowed on the screen, Mike's username, CodeMonkey88, lighting up post after post. "Miami prep," he'd written last week. "Can't wait to let go with Bill. Moderator says it's mind-blowing." I felt sick, my hands clenching as Lila scrolled. There were videos too, grainy clips of guys chanting about surrendering to the experience, their voices robotic. "This is cult-level stuff," Lila said, her tone hard. "They're brainwashing these idiots, and Mike and Bill are all in." The next day, I snapped. I texted Mike and Bill to come over, told Jenny and Lila to back me up. I wasn't letting this fester another second. They walked in, Mike slouched, Bill swaggering like he owned the place. "What's this, an intervention?" Bill smirked, leaning against the wall. "Sit," I said, my voice steel, pointing at the couch. Jenny stood beside me, her arms crossed, while Lila hovered with her laptop. "I know about Straight Escape," I started, watching Mike's face pale. "I know about the moderator, the hypnosis, the whole damn thing. Explain it, now." Bill laughed, a sharp, nervous sound. "You're blowing this up, Sarah. It's just a trip. Sun, fun, a little gay action. Doesn't count." Jenny stepped forward, her voice shaking with rage. "Doesn't count? You're my husband, Bill. You think I'm okay with you screwing around?" Mike jumped in, his hands up like he could calm us. "You don't get it. The moderator says you can't resist. You surrender mind, body, and soul, or it breaks you. It's not cheating, it's a gaycation." I felt my blood boil, the absurdity of it colliding with the hurt. "Stop hiding behind that word," I shouted, stepping closer. "You're not anthropologists, you're cheaters, and you're delusional if you think this saves our marriages," Lila cut in, cool as ice. "I sent this to an FBI contact. Straight Escape's under watch. Could be a fraud ring. You two might be in deeper than you think." Bill's smirk vanished, and Mike's eyes widened, panic flashing across his face. "FBI? Sarah, you can't do this," he stammered. I crossed my arms, staring him down. "I already did. I changed the locks too. You go to Miami, you're out. For good." Bill stormed out, cursing us all, but Mike lingered, his shoulders sagging. "I didn't mean for this," he mumbled, tears in his eyes. I don't know who I am anymore." For a second, I felt a pang of pity, but it drowned under the weight of his betrayal. "Figure it out somewhere else," I said, turning away. He left, the door clicking shut behind him, and I sank onto the couch, my hands shaking as Jenny hugged me tight. The days after were a blur. I drained our joint account, legal here, thank God, and had the locks changed by Friday. Mike texted nonstop, begging to talk, but I ignored him. Jenny wasn't doing much better. Bill had spun the same story to her, and when she confronted him, he doubled down, even bringing up hypnosis and permanent feminization, like it was a sales pitch. She kicked him out too, and we leaned on each other, two sisters reeling from the same bizarre storm. Lila kept digging, uncovering more about Straight Escape, how it preyed on men like Mike and Bill, feeding their midlife crises with promises of guilt-free escape. "They've got a whole network," she told me over coffee one morning. "The moderator's some ghost. Could be anywhere. FBI's closing in, but it'll take time." Then came the call from Mike's mom, Ellen. Saturday night. My phone rang and her voice blasted through, shrill with fury. "Sarah, how dare you kick my son out? What about the boys? You're a selfish—" I cut her off, my patience gone. "Ellen, ask Mike about the gaycation. He'll explain." She scoffed. "What nonsense is that?" But I hung up, too drained to fight. Hours later, she called back, sobbing. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "He told us, me and Phil. That garbage about surrendering how it's normal. Phil threw him out, said he'd call the cops if he didn't go." I sighed, a bitter relief settling in. "Support Jenny too," I said. "Bill's part of it." Ellen gasped, and I heard Phil in the background, his voice rising. "I've got to go," she said, and the line went dead. Mike's next text was a mess, rambling about how I'd used the gaycation to ruin him, how I and his parents were homophobic for not understanding. I replied, "Grow up," and blocked him. Sunday, I took the day off work, watched the locksmith swap out every bolt, and felt a strange calm as the $500 bill hit my card. Worth it. Jenny came over that night, her eyes red from crying. "Bill told me it's like writing angry thoughts and locking them away," she said, her voice hollow. "He says some guys never come back from the gaycation. Hypnosis turns them pseudo-gay forever. What did we marry, Sarah?" I didn't have an answer, just held her as we sat there, stunned by how fast our lives had imploded. A week later, I sat in a lawyer's office, divorce papers spread out like a map to freedom. Mike had texted that morning. "I'm not going. I'm sorry. Can we talk?" I stared at the words, my thumb hovering over the reply button, but I didn't type anything. I looked up at the lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Claire, and said, "File it." She nodded, scribbling a note, and I felt this weight lift. Not all of it, but enough. Outside, the March air was crisp, and I walked to my car, the boys' faces flashing in my mind. I'd have to tell Josh and Ethan soon. Something simple, something that didn't break them. Dad's figuring things out, maybe. It wasn't a lie. The drive home was quiet, just the hum of the engine and my thoughts spinning. I kept replaying Mike's text, the desperation in it, and part of me wondered if he meant it this time, if he'd finally seen the hole he'd dug himself into. But then I remembered his voice Sunday, that smug certainty about surrendering to the gaycation, and the wondering turned to steel. I pulled into the driveway, the house looking different now, mine, not ours, and I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Inside, I poured a glass of wine, the first in days, and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the spot where he'd waved that stupid poster. It felt like a lifetime ago, but it'd only been 10 days. Jenny called as the sun dipped below the trees, her voice steadier than it had been all week. "Sarah, I saw Bill today," she said, and I braced myself, gripping the glass a little tighter. "He showed up at Mom's, where I've been staying, looking like hell, said he's done with the gaycation, that he's sorry, begged me to take him back." I could hear the exhaustion in her, the same kind I felt, and I asked, "What'd you say?" She sighed, long and heavy. "I told him it's over. He can beg all he wants, but I'm not living with a man who'd throw us away for some online fantasy. Mom kicked him out after that, said she's ashamed to call him her son-in-law." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, a grim satisfaction settling in. Bill and Mike, cut loose, floundering, they'd earned it. Lila texted me later that night, a string of messages that lit up my phone. "FBI hit Straight Escape hard today. Servers down, moderator's name leaked, some guy in Ohio, real creep. Mike and Bill's usernames popped up in the logs. They might get calls soon." I read it twice, my pulse quickening. I pictured Mike, holed up wherever he was, getting that call, his world shrinking to a single cold moment of truth. Bill, too, probably pacing that motel room, his bravado crumbling. They'd chased this glittering lie, and now it was chasing them back, legal papers and all. I set the phone down, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. Justice, maybe, or at least the start of it. The next morning I woke to a voicemail from Ellen, Mike's mom. Her voice was thick, broken, nothing like the shrill anger from before. "Sarah, it's me. Phil and I. We talked to Mike last night. He told us everything. Straight Escape, the hypnosis, how he thought it'd free him. We didn't raise him for this. Phil told him not to come around till he's fixed himself, if he ever can. I'm so sorry, honey. We're here for you and Jenny." I listened, standing by the window, the early light spilling across the floor. It hurt, hearing her pain, but it healed something too, knowing they saw him for what he'd become. I didn't call back, not yet. I needed space to breathe. By Friday, I'd started packing Mike's things, clothes, books, that Star Wars mug he loved, stacking boxes in the garage. Josh caught me at it, his voice quiet. "Is Dad gone for good?" I stopped, turning to him, his brown eyes so like Mike's it stung. "He's not living here anymore," I said, soft but firm. "But he's still your dad. We'll figure it out, okay?" He nodded, slow, and wandered off, leaving me with a lump in my throat. Ethan asked less, just hugged me extra tight that night, and I held him close, promising myself they'd be okay. We'd be okay. Word got around, Mike was staying with a coworker, barely showing up to work, a shadow of the man I'd married. Jenny said Bill tried calling her again, left a rambling message about how the gaycation wasn't worth it, how he'd lost his soul anyway. They were drowning, the both of them, in the wreckage they'd made, and I couldn't muster pity anymore. Lila's last update came Sunday. FBI's building a case. Mike and Bill might dodge charges, but their names are mud now. Straight Escape's done. I read it on the porch, a breeze rustling the trees, and felt this calm settle over me. Deep, real, like the first clear day after a storm. I don't know what's next, not fully. Maybe I'll sign those papers and move on, take the boys somewhere sunny. Just us, no shadows. Maybe Mike'll fight to come back, and I'll have to decide if there's anything left to save. But I'm not afraid anymore. I've learned something brutal and true. People can sell you any dream, online, in person, and it's on you to see through the bullshit. Mike and Bill didn't, and they're paying for it, lost in a mess they can't talk their way out of. Me, I'm still standing, scars and all, and that's enough for now. What about you? Ever watch someone torch their life for something this dumb? Or maybe you've outrun a disaster like this. Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if you're not subscribed, hit that button. We've got more wild rides ahead, and I'm here for all of it.